The bitter January wind cut across the Montana prairie like a knife, carving through flesh and bone as Willa Collins crawled through the snow, her frozen fingers clawing at the icy crust that threatened to become her burial shroud. 3 days since outlaws had ambushed their wagon, murdered her husband Thomas, and left her for dead in the unforgiving winter of 1879. Blood from her gunshot wound had frozen against her side, a macabre blessing that had temporarily sealed the injury. Willa's breath came in ragged puffs of white vapor as darkness crept along the edges of her vision. The storm that had been threatening all day now unleashed its fury, obscuring what little remained of the fading daylight. "Thomas," she whispered, though her husband was 2 days buried beneath a shallow grave she'd scratched into the frozen ground with her bare hands before her strength gave out. "I'm coming to you soon." As consciousness began to slip away, Willa thought she heard hoofbeats, likely just the hallucinations of a dying woman. Her eyelids grew heavy as snowflakes caught on her lashes, melting against her feverish skin. Zeke Donovan pulled his hat lower against the driving snow, cursing his decision to make the journey from his ranch to Helena during winter. But supplies were running low, and the cattle needed feed to survive until spring. His horse Brutus nickered nervously, sensing something amiss. "What is it, boy?" Zeke patted the animal's neck, following the horse's gaze to what appeared to be a dark smudge against the pristine white landscape. He squinted through the swirling snow. "Hold up." Dismounting, Zeke approached cautiously, his hand resting on the Colt revolver at his hip. Times were dangerous in this territory, and a man couldn't be too careful. As he drew closer, his breath caught in his throat. Good Lord Almighty. A woman lay half buried in the snow, her black mourning dress barely visible against the deepening drifts. Her skin was pale as porcelain, lips tinged blue, auburn hair frozen in tendrils around her face. Kneeling beside her, Zeke pressed 2 fingers against her neck, certain he'd found a corpse. But there it was, the faintest flutter of a pulse. Without hesitation, Zeke shrugged out of his heavy buffalo coat and wrapped it around the woman's limp form. He gathered her into his arms, alarmed at how little she weighed, how cold she felt even through his gloves. "Stay with me, madam," he murmured, though he doubted she could hear him. "I've got you now." Lifting her onto Brutus, he mounted behind her, cradling her against his chest as he turned the horse toward his ranch. It was closer than town, and in this storm, every minute counted. "You're mine to look after now," he promised the unconscious woman as they rode through the blinding snow. "You just hold on." By the time Zeke's ranch house came into view, the storm had intensified to a full blizzard. The woman hadn't stirred once during the hour-long ride, and fear gnawed at him that he'd been too late after all. Clutching her tightly, he dismounted and carried her toward the cabin, shouldering open the door. The warmth inside hit him like a physical force after the icy journey. Zeke laid the woman gently on his bed, still wrapped in his coat, and quickly stoked the fire until flames leapt high in the stone fireplace. Only then did he turn his attention back to his unexpected guest. Unwrapping the coat, he assessed her condition by the firelight. Her dress was torn and blood-stained, and he discovered the source, a bullet wound in her side. It had stopped bleeding, but infection was setting in, the skin around it angry and hot despite her overall chilled state. "Madam, can you hear me?" Zeke gently patted her cheek. The woman's eyelids fluttered but remained closed. Zeke had treated enough injuries on his ranch to know what needed doing. He gathered clean cloths, whiskey for disinfecting, and his rudimentary medical supplies. With careful hands, he cut away the fabric around her wound, apologizing softly though she couldn't hear him. "Forgive the impropriety, madam, but that bullet's got to come out." As he cleaned the wound, he noticed the wedding band on her finger. A widow, he guessed, given the black dress. Someone had attacked her and left her to die in the snow. The thought kindled anger in his chest as he worked to save her life. The bullet hadn't gone deep, lodged against a rib that had likely saved her life. When Zeke extracted it with a pair of sterilized tweezers, the woman moaned but didn't wake. After cleaning and bandaging the wound, he covered her with every blanket he owned and settled into a chair beside the bed to keep vigil. "Don't you worry," he told her sleeping form. "You're safe now. I'll protect you." Sometime near dawn, Willa surfaced from darkness into pain. Her side burned like fire, and for a moment she thought she was still dying in the snow. Then she registered warmth, softness beneath her, and the crackling of a fire nearby. Opening her eyes required monumental effort. A rough-hewn ceiling came into focus above her. Not heaven, then. She turned her head slightly and found herself looking at a man slumped in a chair beside the bed, his chin resting on his chest in sleep. A stranger with a weathered face, dark hair, and several days' worth of stubble. Fear spiked through her. Where was she? Who was this man? Willa tried to sit up and gasped as pain lanced through her side. The sound woke her companion instantly, his eyes a striking blue that reminded her of summer skies fixed on her face. "Easy now," he said, his voice a deep rumble. "You'll tear your stitches." "Who are you?" Willa managed, her throat painfully dry. "Where am I?" Zeke Donovan. He stood and poured water from a pitcher into a cup. "You're at my ranch about 20 miles east of Helena, found you half buried in snow during yesterday's storm." He helped her drink, supporting her head with a surprisingly gentle hand. "Thought you were dead at first." The water soothed her parched throat. "I nearly was, thank you, Mr. Donovan. Just Zeke, madam, and you are Willa Collins." Her voice broke as memories flooded back. "My husband and I were traveling to Virginia City. Outlaws attacked our wagon 3 days ago. They killed Thomas and shot me when I tried to stop them." Tears welled in her eyes. "I buried him as best I could, but I was so weak." Zeke's expression darkened. "I'm mighty sorry for your loss, Mrs. Collins. Please call me Willa." She closed her eyes briefly. "I have nothing left. They took everything, our money, our supplies, Thomas's watch, even our wedding photograph." "You have your life," Zeke said firmly. "And you're welcome to stay here until you're healed and can decide what comes next." Willa studied him, this stranger who had saved her. Despite his rugged appearance, there was kindness in his eyes. "Why would you do that for someone you don't know?" A small smile touched his lips. "Out here we look after each other. It's the only way to survive." He stood. "Now you need food, I'll make some broth." As Zeke moved around the cabin, Willa took in her surroundings. The place was simple but well kept. A bachelor's home, clearly, but not lacking in comfort. Bookshelves lined one wall, surprising her with their number and variety of titles. "You raid," she observed when he returned with a steaming mug. "Winter nights are long in Montana territory." He helped her sit up slightly, propping pillows behind her. "Not much else to do when snow blocks the door for days." Willa sipped the broth, warmth spreading through her. "I taught school back in Ohio before I married Thomas. He convinced me to come west, said there was a fortune to be made in the gold fields." "That dreams lured many a man to his grave," Zeke said quietly. "Gold fever makes folks take risks they shouldn't. Thomas was always a dreamer." Willa's voice softened. "I would have followed him anywhere." The following days established a routine. Zeke tended Willa's wound, brought her food, and sat with her in the evenings, reading aloud from his collection of books while snow continued to fall outside, sealing them in their own private world. A week after her rescue, Willa was strong enough to sit up properly. Zeke had lent her one of his shirts to wear while he washed and mended her dress, and though it swallowed her frame, she felt more herself than she had since the attack. "Tell me about your ranch," she asked one evening as they shared a simple supper of beans and cornbread. Zeke's face brightened. 500 acres, most of it good grazing land. 60 head of cattle, should be more come spring when the calves arrive. Been building it up for 6 years now. All alone. Had a partner when I started, my brother Elijah. He took fever 3 winters back." Zeke's expression clouded. "Been on my own since." Willa reached across the table and placed her hand on his. "I'm sorry." His eyes met hers, and something passed between them, a recognition of shared loss, of understanding what it meant to continue living when someone you loved was gone. "Thank you," he said simply, and turned his hand to briefly squeeze hers before releasing it. That night, lying in Zeke's bed while he slept on a pallet by the fire, Willa realized she'd gone hours without thinking of Thomas. The knowledge brought both guilt and a strange sense of liberation. By the third week of her stay, the heavy snows had finally ceased, though drifts still made travel difficult. Willa had graduated from bed rest to moving carefully around the cabin, insisting on helping with cooking and small chores despite Zeke's protests. "I'm not made of glass," she told him firmly when he tried to take a pot from her hands, "and I won't be a burden." "You're not a burden, Willa." Zeke stepped back, respecting her independence, "but you're still healing. And I'll heal faster if I'm useful." She stirred the stew she was preparing. "Besides, I've eaten your cooking for weeks. It's my turn to show you what a proper meal tastes like." A smile cracked through his serious expression. "Are you saying my cooking lacks something, Mrs. Collins?" "Flavor, Mr. Donovan, it lacks flavor." Her own smile felt strange on her face when she last had cause to smile. Yet here she was, teasing this man who had saved her life, who had opened his home to her without question. That evening's meal was indeed more flavorful than Zeke's usual fare, and he made no attempt to hide his appreciation. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" he asked, sopping up gravy with a piece of bread. "My mother." She believed a woman should know how to keep a home before she learned anything else. Willa sat back, pleased with his reaction, "Though I was more interested in books than baking." "You mentioned you were a teacher," Willa nodded, "for 5 years before I married. I loved it opening young minds to new ideas, watching them discover the joy of learning." "We could use a teacher around these parts," Zeke said thoughtfully. "Nearest school's in Helena, too far for most ranch families." "Are there many children?" "Enough. Homesteaders have been coming steadily the last few years." He studied her. "Something to consider, perhaps, when you're fully recovered." The suggestion planted a seed in Willa's mind. She had been avoiding thoughts of the future, of what would come after she left Zeke's cabin. The idea of having a purpose again, of building something new from the ashes of her old life, took root. The next morning, Zeke announced he needed to check his cattle. "The weather's clear enough, I won't be gone long." "I'll be fine," Willa assured him. "Go tend to your herd." After he left, she decided to wash her hair. Heating water on the stove, she bent over a basin and worked soap through her long auburn locks, reveling in the simple pleasure of cleanliness. She was combing out the tangles by the fire when Zeke returned earlier than expected. He stopped short in the doorway, his gaze fixed on her. Willa suddenly realized how she must look wearing his shirt, her damp hair loose around her shoulders. Heat rose to her cheeks. "I'm sorry, I thought you'd be longer," she stammered, reaching to gather her hair. "Don't." The word was soft but emphatic. Zeke closed the door behind him and removed his hat, his eyes never leaving her. "It's beautiful." The atmosphere in the cabin shifted, charged with something neither of them had acknowledged until now. Willa's heart beat faster as Zeke crossed to where she sat. "I shouldn't say such things," he said, his voice rough. "You're still grieving your husband, you're under my protection, but seeing you like this—" Willa stood, trembling slightly. "What do you see, Zeke?" He reached out, hesitated, then gently touched a strand of her hair. "Life. After all this death and cold and loss, I see life." The honesty in his words moved her deeply. For weeks, she had been only half alive, surviving but not truly living. Yet here, in this moment with this man who had saved more than just her body, she felt fully present for the first time since Thomas's death. "I don't know what happens next," she admitted. "I only know I'm grateful to be here." Zeke's hand dropped to his side. "You should rest." "I'll see to dinner tonight." The moment passed, but something had changed between them. That evening they spoke more openly than before, sharing stories of their pasts, their dreams, the disappointments and joys that had shaped them. "I wanted to be a doctor once," Zeke confessed. "Studied some medical books, even applied to a school back east." "What happened?" "My father died. The ranch needed looking after and Elijah couldn't manage alone," he shrugged. "Some dreams get set aside for duty." "Do you regret it?" Zeke considered the question. "Not regret exactly." I love this land, but sometimes I wonder about the path not taken, Willa nodded. I understand. I wonder what would have happened if I'd refused Thomas's proposal, stayed teaching in Ohio. Would you be happier? I don't know. Different, certainly. She met his gaze across the table. I wouldn't have met you. The words hung between them, honest and weighted with possibility. February brought milder weather, and Zeke determined it was time for Willa to see a proper doctor. He hitched his team to the wagon and carefully helped her aboard, tucking blankets around her though the day was relatively warm. It's only a precaution, he assured her as they set off for Helena. Your wound is healing well, but I'd feel better having Doc Williams take a look. The journey took most of the morning, and Willa drank in the sights eagerly after weeks confined to the cabin. The landscape was breathtaking, rolling plains stretching to distant mountains, the vastness of Montana territory laid out before them. It's beautiful, she said softly. That it is. But Zeke wasn't looking at the scenery. Helena bustled with activity compared to the isolation of the ranch. Willa felt overwhelmed by the noise and movement after so much quiet. Zeke kept a protective hand at her elbow as he guided her to the doctor's office. Mrs. Collins, is it, doctor? Williams was a kindly older man with spectacles and steady hands. Let's have a look at what Mr. Donovan's field medicine has accomplished. After examining the healing wound, the doctor pronounced Zeke's care exemplary. Another week of taking it easy, and you'll be good as new, Mrs. Collins. You're a fortunate woman. Not many survive what you've been through. I know, Willa said, glancing at Zeke. I was blessed with a guardian angel. Zeke's ears reddened at her words. Just happened to be in the right place. Providence, I'd call it, the doctor said with a knowing look between them. After leaving the doctor's office, Zeke surprised Willa by suggesting they stay in town overnight. There's a hotel with proper beds and hot baths. Thought you might appreciate some civilization before heading back to my humble cabin. That sounds wonderful, Willa admitted, though your cabin has become more home to me than anywhere else. The Bitterroot Hotel was the finest establishment in Helena, its lobby adorned with velvet furnishings and gleaming brass fixtures. Zeke secured 2 rooms and arranged for bath water to be brought to Willa's. Meet me for supper at 6, he suggested. The restaurant here is supposed to be quite good. When Willa descended to the dining room that evening, she had done her best with limited resources. She'd washed and pressed her black dress, arranged her hair with care, and borrowed a touch of rose water from the hotel maid to dab at her wrists and throat. Zeke stood when she approached the table, and the look in his eyes made her heart flutter. He too had made an effort, his usually wild hair tamed, his face cleanly shaven, wearing a proper suit coat that made him look both distinguished and somewhat uncomfortable. You look beautiful, he said simply. Thank you. You clean up rather well yourself, Mr. Donovan. Dinner was the most elaborate meal Willa had eaten in months. They savored each course, talking and laughing with an ease that felt both new and familiar. When Zeke ordered a bottle of wine, Willa raised an eyebrow. A special occasion. Life is the occasion, he replied, raising his glass to her. To second chances. After dinner, neither seemed eager to retire to their separate rooms. They walked through town instead, Zeke proudly showing Willa the sights of Helena by gaslight. The town's grown so much in the last decade, he explained. When I first came through, it was little more than a mining camp. Do you come to town often? Only when necessary. I prefer the quiet of the ranch, he glanced at her, though it's been less quiet lately. Are you saying I disturb your peace, Mr. Donovan? There was teasing in her tone, but a genuine question underneath. Zeke stopped walking and turned to face her. You've disturbed everything, Willa, in the best possible way. The confession hung between them like a tangible thing. Willa's breath caught as Zeke slowly reached for her hand, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. I know it's too soon, he said softly. I know you're still healing, still grieving, but I need you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here. Willa looked down at their joined hands. I loved Thomas, part of me always will. I would never ask you to forget him, but another part of me. She raised her eyes to his. Another part of me is already looking forward, not back. Is that wrong? Is it too soon? There's no proper timetable for the heart, Willa. Zeke's thumb traced gentle circles on her palm. We don't choose when or how healing comes. In the soft glow of the street lamp, Willa made a decision. Rising on tiptoe, she pressed a gentle kiss to Zeke's cheek. Thank you for saving my life, Zachary Donovan, in more ways than one. The ride back to the ranch the next day was filled with a new awareness, a tension sweet with possibility. They spoke of practical matters: spring planting, cattle prices, the possibility of Willa organizing lessons for nearby children, but beneath the ordinary conversation ran a current of anticipation. As March brought the first hints of thaw, Willa received word that the men who had attacked her wagon had been captured in Virginia City. The sheriff invited her to come identify them for trial. I'll go with you, Zeke said immediately when she showed him the letter. You don't have to. You've already done so much. I'm not letting you face those animals alone. His tone brooked no argument. Besides, there's something I need to do in Virginia City anyway. The journey took 3 days on horseback. Willa rode her own mount now, a gentle mare Zeke had been training. Each night they camped under the stars, and on the second evening, Zeke finally shared what business he had in Virginia City. I telegraphed ahead to a jeweler there, he said as they sat beside their campfire. Asked him to hold something for me. Willa's heart skipped. What sort of something? Instead of answering, Zeke reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet pouch. I know it's fast, maybe too fast, but life out here has taught me not to waste time when something matters. He poured the contents into his palm, a simple gold band set with a small pearl. It was my mother's. I've been carrying it since we left the ranch. Willa stared at the ring, then at Zeke's face, earnest and vulnerable in the firelight. I'm not asking for an answer now, he hurried to add. Only that you think about it, about staying, not as my guest or my responsibility, but as my wife. Tears filled Willa's eyes. Oh, Zeke. Is that a good oh, Zeke, or a you're a fool to think I'd consider this oh, Zeke? Anxiety tinged his voice. Willa laughed through her tears. It's I can't believe this is happening, oh, Zeke. She reached for his hand, closing his fingers around the ring. Keep it safe until after the trial. Once that's behind me, I'll have my answer for you. The identification of her attackers was mercifully brief. Willa stood straight-backed in the sheriff's office, pointing without hesitation to the 2 men who had murdered her husband and left her for dead. The outlaws would hang within the week. As they left the jailhouse, Willa felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It's over, she said, breathing deeply. They can't hurt anyone else now. Zeke led her to a small park in the center of town. Spring was further along here, crocuses pushing through the soil, trees budding with new life. Are you all right? He asked, studying her face. Willa considered the question. Yes, she said, somewhat surprised to realize it was true. I am. They sat on a bench, watching townspeople go about their business. After a comfortable silence, Willa turned to Zeke. I've been thinking about your proposal. His expression grew serious. And? When you found me in the snow, I was ready to die. I had nothing left, no husband, no home, no future. She took his hand. You didn't just save my life, Zeke. You gave me a reason to keep living. You showed me that loss isn't the end of everything. Hope bloomed in Zeke's eyes, but he remained silent, letting her finish. I will always carry Thomas in my heart, Willa continued, but my heart is big enough for new love too, she smiled. So yes, Zachary Donovan, I will marry you. Joy transformed Zeke's face. He pulled the ring from his pocket with trembling fingers and slipped it onto her hand. It fit perfectly, as if it had always been meant for her. I promise to cherish you every day, he vowed. To protect you, to respect you, to build a life worthy of the trust you're placing in me. And I promise to stand beside you through whatever comes, Willa replied. To make a home with you, to face the future together, no matter what it holds. They were married 2 days later in Virginia City's small church. The ceremony was simple, attended by a few of Zeke's friends from neighboring ranches who happened to be in town. Willa wore a new dress of blue calico instead of widow's black, a symbolic shedding of her grief. As they exchanged vows, Willa thought of how close she had come to death in that snowstorm, how differently her story might have ended. Instead, here she stood, beginning a new chapter with this man who had found her in the snow and called her his own. The journey back to their ranch now felt like a homecoming. Spring had truly arrived during their absence, painting the prairie with wildflowers and fresh green grass. Cattle dotted the hillsides, new calves wobbling beside their mothers. "Welcome home, Mrs. Donovan," Zeke said as they crested the final rise and the ranch house came into view. Willa leaned against her husband's shoulder, content in a way she hadn't believed possible just months ago. "It's good to be home." That night, as they lay together in the bed that had once been only his, now theirs, Zeke traced the healing scar on Willa's side with gentle fingers. "Does it still pain you?" "Only when the weather changes," she said. "It's a reminder." "Of what you lost," Willa shook her head. "Of what I found." She placed her hand over his. "Life is full of storms, Zeke. Some we weather, some nearly destroy us. But sometimes in the worst blizzard we find unexpected shelter. And sometimes," he added, pulling her closer, "we find the person we're meant to weather all future storms with." Outside, spring rain began to fall, pattering against the roof in a soothing rhythm. Inside, wrapped in each other's warmth, Willa and Zeke Donovan drifted to sleep, secure in the knowledge that whatever seasons lay ahead, they would face them together. 1 year later, the Donovan Ranch had expanded to include a small schoolhouse where Willa taught 12 children from neighboring homesteads. The ranch itself was thriving, with new buildings, more cattle, and a vegetable garden that was the envy of the county. On the anniversary of the day Zeke had found Willa in the snow, they stood together on their porch, watching the sun set over their land. Willa's hand rested on her swollen belly, their first child due to arrive before summer's end. "Any regrets?" Zeke asked, his arm around her shoulders. Willa looked up at the man who had saved her in every possible way, the man whose love had helped her rebuild from ashes, whose strength had become her foundation. "Not a single one," she said, and reached up to kiss him as the last rays of sunlight painted the Montana sky in shades of promise.